AI Realized, the podcast about everything that is new, now, and next for enterprise executives deploying AI. Hosted by myself, Christina Elwood, and my collaborator, David Yakobovich.
Our guests will share what's driving AI adoption, use cases, and business models for the data and AI economy.
Where the future is bright.
Welcome to AI Realized, the podcast for enterprise executives leading AI deployments. From tackling security, data, and operational challenges to navigating organizational transformation, AI deployment offers a unique opportunity to redesign organizations from the inside out. I'm Christina Elwood, your host for today's episode, and we're talking today with Chris Parmer, the co-founder of Plotly. In this episode, we're going to talk about accurate data analytics using AI, and Chris is a particularly valuable person for us to talk with about that because besides being the co-founder of Plotly, he brings a rare mix of perspectives, having been trained as an electrical engineer and as a self-professed data nerd. Chris, welcome to AI Realized.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's lovely to have you. And I'm interested in talking about this topic because I too have a bit of a data background and have, I think, somewhat of the misconception that many people have that using AI for data analytics is a bit of an oxymoron. You want to talk a bit about how do you do that accurately when you're using a probabilistic system to do something that I think of as being deterministic?
Totally. It's such a good question. And I think, the first few years that we were working with AI, we noticed how much it hallucinates, right? And data work is meant to be accurate. It's meant to be the source of truth, right? You're not supposed to, if an AI model hallucinates 1% of the time, you can't make decisions off of that. Now, what's really changed lately is in the last year, AI became remarkably good at writing code. And for us at Plotly, and for a long time, our primary customers are doing data analytics through code. So they're writing Python primarily code to do data analytics rather than dealing with point and click tools like Excel or Power BI or Tableau. And by working in Python, they get a lot more flexibility and power. And it's become kind of the standard language for advanced data analytics. So the approach that we take for doing data analytics with AI that we've taken in our latest product, Plotly Studio, is we don't have the AI analyze the data directly. We don't send, if you have an Excel file or a CSV file with 100,000 rows, we don't send those 100,000 rows to the LLM directly and ask it questions. Instead, we take a schema of that data and then we ask the LLM to write code that would analyze the data through that code according to the person's question. So if the person asks, okay, what's the most common value in this data set? The LLM won't look through the data set directly. The LLM will write 5 lines of Python code. That's very standard and very unlikely to get wrong. And it's also verifiable. You can see the code that it's writing and audit it, just like you would your own code or colleague's code. It'll write those 5 lines of code to find the most common value in that data set and then run that code and then show you the result. So we're almost using AI less as the sort of magical oracle to tell you the answer and more as just this tool that will help you write remarkable code remarkably quickly.
That makes so much sense to me. This whole idea of using code for data analytics, I think, deserves a double click as well. So is that primarily done in situations, Chris, where you're trying to do data analytics within a software system, like a SaaS system, for example? You want to show the analytics of use or something like that. And so you've got this code that is generating the UI, it's doing all of the workflows and things like that. And you want to have analytics within that.
It's used for that, but also as a means to an end just for day-to-day data analytics or data science work, exploratory data analytics. If you're if you're a data analyst and you need to do more sophisticated data analytics, like some data science methods, some statistical methods, then you're doing it primarily in code. And so for a long time, this was just done in industries like classical engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, physics. And then in finance, quantitative finance has been doing this in code for a long time. Pharmaceutical, bioinformatics, writing code, working with things like Jupyter notebooks to do anything from exploratory data analytics to more sophisticated modeling on top of that. And even tools like Spark that you might hear about are all doing data analytics as code in this way. Even SQL, I guess, writing SQL queries is what I consider data analytics as code as well.
In many ways, it is. Okay, so that's very helpful. And I'm mindful of that many of our executives that are deploying AI are not building products, but they are using it for their own internal operations and workflows. So would you advise them to take a similar approach and rather than use a BI tool, to have someone on the team who knows how to do analytics to use coding as their method for doing their data exploration? Because in many ways, this is data that has insights that we don't really know what we're looking for yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been the career path for many folks who are professional data analysts within large organizations to level up. They might take a 6-week or 12-week Python boot camp or data science boot camp to learn Jupyter notebooks and Python and writing SQL to make their data analytics more powerful and more flexible and be able to automate it easier. And that's the way the industry's been going for a long time. But now we have this massive shift where you don't need to take a 6-week boot camp anymore because AI can help you write that code, which is
So what made me ask that question is I was thinking like democratizing many other things, like product development and other areas. This is really democratizing who can do data science, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it allows you also, for a long time, we've been thinking that, okay, code is a thing that's hard to learn, but even sophisticated BI tools that have complex user interfaces, those have a learning curve themselves. And so we see a lot of organizations where there's the dedicated person that was trained in using the BI tool. And if you have a question, you've got to ask that person to make the dashboard for you. And you end up with companies that have thousands or tens of thousands of dashboards because there's a new one created for every single question that an executive or a stakeholder or a customer might ask. And that's because those folks don't have the time to go into a BI tool and click around and learn it and all of that. But now that you can do this with natural language, those stakeholders can just ask the question directly themselves. And the underlying technology that I think all data analytics will be built on in the future is they'll ask a question and then code will get written that will be the data analytics code that would answer that question. And then they'll see the result. And that's the technology we've been building our latest product off of, and really our hypothesis flatly.
I got to tell you, I was one of those executives asking for the dashboard from the BI person and always needing another cut of the data or another type of question answered or whatever. So I really relate to this challenge, and I love the Plotly product because for the first time, I can take my data files and I can do the analysis on them myself, and all of my what if questions can be answered easily. And one of the things I like about the sort of initial experience is that you automatically get these predefined tables. So I didn't have to figure out what table I was looking for. I feed it my data. It shows me all these representations, these graphs and tables and so forth. And from there, I can decide, oh, I want to know a different cut or whatever. And even though all the types of graphs are not what I need, it doesn't matter. I just ignore the ones I don't need. It doesn't get in my way. It actually helps me way more than I ever thought it would to have it be pre-structured for me in that way. I find when I show it to people, that's one of the things that really lights them up is they're like, wow, all of these different cuts of this is amazing. This is like magic. And when you go to take the next step and use the natural language to change what you're looking at, as long as it's a filter, it's really easy. But if you need to do a graph that isn't automatically generated for you, or you need to really change the way the graph is structured. There is a little bit of a learning curve there to learn
Yes.
how to do that. Are you finding that, am I typical in
Yeah.
your user business user who isn't a technologist running into that challenge, or is that,
Totally.
yeah? Okay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's this learning curve around prompting, right? And it's called prompt engineering for a while. And I really want to get the product to this point where you feel like you don't need to know all these secret tricks about how to structure your language and what you want. And we're getting there so that you can more easily express your queries and get a really good answer out of the box. And I think your point too about just seeing some things immediately is enormously helpful. A lot of product experiences out there just show you a blank slate and it's, what do you want? You can have anything. And that maybe is freeing, but it's also a little paralyzing too. And so and I think with data, especially, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And now that we can just auto generate it, we like to present users with lots of different views that are semantically interesting to them about their data. And there might be an experience where you're doing very little prompting yourself and you're just clicking through the suggestions that we're auto generating for you and giving you that inspiration because you might not have the types of questions that you want to ask or the ways you answer them at the tip of your fingertips. I've found that even myself using it, doing data viz for 15 years now, I'm presented with really interesting suggestions, ones that I wouldn't have come up myself.
Yeah, I like that too. I also think you've done a nice job on that UI with breaking so that people don't have to write a perfect prompt. There are little windows that you can put the portions of the prompt.
Mhm.
So the prompt ends up being very well structured because you've pre-structured these little fields so that people are not having to know the proper way to do the structuring. So I think that was a wise move on your part too. Now, I know Plotly has a very large open source community because you are an open source core and you also have an enterprise version of the product. And I've had the pleasure of attending some of your local, you're in San Francisco, I'm in San Francisco, and to some of your local community events and met some of your users. I'm really curious how it's being received, how Plotly Studio, the AI version of your product, is being received in the open source community. And is there a difference in how it's being received in the enterprise community?
Yeah, it's a great question. We found that when we released it, suddenly this new audience became delighted by our technologies. This audience that I think aspired to do kind of code-based analytics before, was on the edge of the community or getting into the community a little bit. And then we're suddenly able to create things that would have otherwise taken them weeks to create immediately. We have so many folks in our community and this is shared across our enterprise customers as well, where they're very data literate and they are beginner code literate. And they are now able to focus more on their data literacy in exploring their data and working with the product, knowing that it's fully backed by all the flexibility that they desired as they were starting to get interested in code, but without needing to spend all of that time writing the code or learning it. And there's been some reticence too. I think there's folks that are working in code in our community that really love to do, and prompting is almost like learning a new programming language. I've given some talks where I talk about we're coding in English now. And so I think for some folks, there's maybe a little bit of grief of losing that craft or thinking they might lose it. I personally have found that a lot of the skills and the ways of thinking as being a software engineer translate to still prompting. I personally find it still to be a pretty creative experience. And then among our enterprises, every enterprise we talk to, incorporating AI is like in their top 3 company goals. It's just everywhere, right? And there's a lot of experimentation that we're seeing that's happening. And it still feels like we're in that era. And we get a lot of the same questions around, okay, how do you trust it? How do you verify it? The point you brought up earlier about structuring the prompts is a good one because we get a lot of questions about, okay, how do you reproduce it? If in a typical chat conversation, it might be hundreds of messages long. And if you have a second person that wants to audit it, they're not going to want to read through your 100 message long chat transcript. So that's some of the things we're doing in the product around structuring the prompts. really nicely. So you can reproduce things easily and audit them and all of those types of things.
And that's interesting. Who in the enterprise is adopting the AI version of the product most? Like,
Yeah.
what are the hot spots in the enterprise?
Yeah. It's really exciting because it's the stakeholders or the consumers of the folks that were previously reliant on the data scientists to build them a Dash app, or which is our other technology for building what we call analytic or data applications. And now they are able to go in and create things themselves. And so this is still in industries where data is core to the decision-making operations. So for us, that means in quantitative finance, trading firms, portfolio management, where you're running models, looking at data every single day to make trading decisions, highly technical. And a lot of the folks that had that sort of Python chops were the bottleneck in a lot of those teams. And so now they're able to be freed up because the stakeholders can visualize and analyze the data themselves in a more sophisticated way. Energy, utilities, also just tons of data with IoT devices out in the field measuring pipelines or measuring the electric grid or measuring equipment out in the field, and just constant data analysis done on all of that data that's coming in to see if things are failing or working properly or not. And so a lot of the managers of these teams that were previously reliant on phoning up their engineer to do the data analysis are able to be freed up to do it themselves, which is really exciting.
Do you have anybody who's using it in a continuous monitoring environment? Because a lot of those, what you just described, are continuous monitoring
Mhm.
pieces. Are people pipelining their data into Plotly Studio and using it as because your graphs are all interactive. I could see them being
Right.
dynamic as well as interactive.
Totally. Yeah, we have so many of our existing customers that have set this stuff up with our core technology, with Dash and Plotly, and building these real-time dashboards. And so now doing data exports from that into Plotly Studio when they need to do a deeper diagnosis. And so there's a bit of a mix of there's still a place for building sort of the real-time dashboard that has a long shelf life. And that's done by our customers with our Dash libraries and our Plotly libraries. And these things are maintained and live up on a TV screen for years. But those just show a fixed number of views, right? So then when an issue comes up, you want to be able to take that data out and explore it really freely and flexibly. And that's where Plotly Studio comes in. So it complements a lot of the existing technology that we've provided really well.
And on the sales and marketing side of the house, the outwardly facing side of the house, there's many of those use cases where you want to look at the data in a more flexible way, but you don't actually need it to be a continuous live feed. So it's a little between the two of those. Do you see any of those cases maybe in finance or operations or product teams or things like that, where people are using the product for non-mission critical but
Mhm.
complex data analytics?
Totally. One of my favorite examples is actually internally. We do a lot of product analytics, see at what points in the product are people falling off or not using it or whatever. And it's pretty complicated stuff. You might A/B test a feature that you release or things like that. And tools out there like Mixpanel or Amplitude or Google Analytics have been the standard for a long time. And at Plotly, I exported all of that data that we had and export it every hour and use AI in Studio to do all my analytics now. So instead of
Wow.
going into one of those tools and using the graphical user interface, which I always found to be like a little bit inflexible, huge learning curve to understand how it works, I'm just typing every day. I'm opening it up and I'm asking new query. Okay, what's the window size that people use most frequently? Or what's the startup time difference on Mac versus Windows of the desktop application? Or all these types of questions that might take 30 minutes to create the chart by point and clicking, figuring it out. I was pretty reliant on other members of my team to create a lot of those things. I've asked just hundreds of questions over the last months. Any curiosity that I have is just immediately there. And you could just type it and ask and get the answer.
Isn't that
It's
awesome?
remarkable. It's just remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, data. We have this problem in SEO and other types of analytics on the marketing side too, where it's just awful to try and get you reports. And the tools that are out there are just, let's just say they're lacking in
Yeah.
flexibility and in usability. So it's just fabulous when you get rid of that obstacle I don't know if that, it's interesting that you're finding that on the product side. This is for product-led growth you're referring to, of course. In the product development side, are you using it there too and looking at bugs and frequency of bugs or areas of bugs or
Mm.
whatever, using it there too?
Yeah, yeah, we've gotten some exports of our GitHub data just to track velocity and things like that. And then in the product development itself of software engineering, we're all using AI as well to accelerate the development itself. And so you start seeing, wow, the whole company starts to feel like we're all working through natural language. We're writing natural language to write the code, we're writing natural language to analyze the data that is tracking events that was written in the code. It starts to feel like this new universal interface. Instead of a mouse and a point and clicking, you're working out of a terminal all day.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
that's really good. And one of the things that has persisted as a challenge for enterprises adopting AI since long before we started AI Realized more than a year ago is the organizational change, the challenge of people changing how they do things. And humans
Mm.
are reluctant to change. But
Yeah.
since you mentioned that you have it so pervasively used inside your organization, do you have some advice for the executives on the call about how to help people get over the hump and how to
Mm.
lead your team in such a way that this approach is culturally designed in instead of
Mhm.
layered on top?
Yeah. I think what worked well for us at Plotly was really encouraging anyone to try out any tool, and especially in the beginning, right? Because a lot of these tools are available on the consumer side as well. And so people start developing their own preferences about what they might like to use, and then being able to bring in the enterprise versions of those. And we have Slack channels and stuff where everyone is sharing their favorite tips and tricks with each other. I think there's definitely a learning curve. And I think what we've seen in our organization is some people will start picking it up and then we'll see the productivity improvements. And I have this theory that it's got to be at least 1.5 times more productive for people to really jump ship. And I think a lot of reluctance in us switching technologies in the past is because it might be 10% more productive or 20% more productive. And that does always feel like enough to get over the learning curve. But with a lot of these tools, it's just night and day. It's weeks to days, days to hours. And so once you can see your colleagues start doing it, at least at Plotly, that's when things have started really taking off.
Yeah, it strikes me that it's the communication between people that's leading to the sort of cultural change rather than the individual adopting it. It's the conversation about the adoption or about the tool or about the
Mhm.
benefit or whatever that's leading to that change. And I think that's especially challenging for organizations that are remote or hybrid because there's less water cooler talk kind of thing. Slack does seem like a good way to close that gap, but not everyone, every culture is oriented to a digital communication platform like that is universal across the company. They have different tools for different areas of the company. Have you observed other ways that people have been able to create that cultural shift that are not dependent on a digital channel?
Mhm. Uh, Within at least with the customers that we've worked with, because this is so new, just starting out with these really dedicated 3-month proof of concepts. We do that a lot with our customers to come in because especially with AI technology, Plotly as the vendor, we know a lot of the best practices already. And we're very eager to learn more from our customers and they're very eager to get the tips and tricks. It because it's such a new technology, having those really close relationships with the vendors, I think is really helpful. And you might need new types of ways to audit the AI, or you might see that the AI isn't returning the answer that you'd expect. But because things are changing so quickly, that feedback between yourself and the vendor can really improve the product and the relationship really quickly. And yeah.
Mm. That's a good observation and takeaway. So, where do you see AI transforming the enterprise in the coming years?
I think that the way that a lot of the roles and responsibilities that we have will remain the same, but the way that we are doing them will be fundamentally different. The products that we're adopting to do the productivity tools that we're doing will look fundamentally different. The user interfaces and everything will be very different. And I think there's no shortage of work to be done. So I think we'll be getting a lot more done, but the way we do it will be very different. And like a lot of incumbent tools around how we work will look different because we'll be, I think, more monitoring and multitasking many things that are happening at once, where the AI systems are plugging away in the background. And as individuals, we're taking on a little bit more of a managing, steering, orchestrating kind of role. That's how I've seen my own work really evolve over the last year. And I think that will make its way into the role of all enterprises as they become more comfortable and as the technology stabilizes.
What's your guidance for executives who are early in their AI adoption journey?
I think for them to use it themselves as well. I think once you really start to use it yourself and see the productivity, it becomes so much more exciting and clear where it should be used throughout the organization.
Do you have any resources that you recommend for listeners who want to learn more about you or about Plotly or about AI?
Our blog is really good. I write in it very frequently with latest thoughts about building products on top of this and stuff. So that's just, you can find that right at plotly.com/blog. And then other newsletters and things that I read. One of the execs at Anthropic has a Substack that is very good. We can get the link for folks after this. Very forward thinking, very kind of geopolitical and interesting. And then on the technology side, I read Simon Wilson's blog almost every day. It's a little more cutting edge on what's coming out in the technology and more on the cutting edge.
Yeah, those are great resources. Thank you for that. And as a AI leader yourself in an executive in a technology company, what leadership skill do you find most valuable when leading an AI initiative?
I think experimentation, especially in this early era, being able to try multiple things at once and throw away work and being very comfortable with throwing away work and throwing away approaches and not getting tied too early to things, especially as the technology is changing so quickly. And especially now as evaluating technologies is easier than ever because of the ability to use AI to do that work.
Do you have a structured way you do experiments?
No, I don't. I follow what feels inspiring or exciting. I try to juggle a few different things at once. I have some R&D experiments that I might be thinking about or running for weeks at a time. I like to have a few different ideas always top of mind, from the back of my mind at once, and pick them up and shuffle them and share often with the team about the experiments. And as a technologist, like really building something that you can demo and demoing it often internally to the team.
Yeah, that's always a good strategy, right? It's a more scientific approach than an engineering approach. If our listeners remember just one thing from you today, what should it be and why?
That AI is going to completely change how we do data analytics, and in the concerns that we have about hallucinating aren't as valid with this new approach of analytics as code and AI writing code to do analytics. So it's going to completely change the whole business intelligence and analytics market. The way we do the products that we use in the next few years are going to be completely different than what we use today.
So thank you, Chris Parmer, co-founder of Plotly, for joining me today on AI Realized.
Great to be here. Thank you.